It's time for the unusual. I want them to put my title up on the screen. I want you to say this with me. We're all going to say this together. You ready? There is more. Say it again. There is more. One more time. There is more. There is more. And that's what this season is all about, is there is more. But every promise of God is conditional, but not on God's side. It is conditional on our side. Whenever we ask God for a miracle, God gives us an instruction. And one person said it like this: the instruction I choose to obey determines the miracle I receive. So if I don't want to obey God's instruction, I can't expect to receive a miracle. But here's what I've learned. When I needed a miracle, sometimes God will ask me to do something that's unusual. In the book of Acts, the Bible says, and the Lord did unusual miracles by the hands of Paul, insomuch that they even took pieces of his garment. And when they laid them on the sick, demon spirits were driven out of the sick and people were healed. It doesn't make sense to take somebody's robe that they worked in and cut it up and send a little piece of that square out to somebody, and when you lay that on their body, they're healed and the devil is cast out of them. That's unusual. But the good thing is you serve an unusual God. And nobody in the Bible ever got an unusual miracle doing something normal. It was always the people who did something unusual that received something unusual. I don't want to be normal. I want to be unusual. Tell the person next to you, I'm not normal. I just need you to know you're not sitting next to a normal person this morning. You're not sitting next to a normal praiser this morning. You're not sitting next to a normal worshiper this morning. You're not sitting next to a normal giver this morning. You're not sitting next to somebody who takes their salvation as a normal thing. No. I'm an unusual person. See, I'm separating myself out for an unusual miracle from an unusual God, because I'm an unusual believer. If that's you, give Jesus a big praise. When I take one step towards God in faith, God always takes 2 steps back towards me in the form of a miracle. Now, don't you go out of this place putting a time limit on God either. Well, if he don't show up tomorrow, I guess he's not going to do it. I heard one person say God doesn't settle all his accounts on Monday. But when God shows up, you say, but God's not showed up yet, and tomorrow's the last day. Well, you need to talk to Lazarus about that, because there's an old song that says, when he's 4 days late, he's still right on time. See, you may be in a situation where you feel like the miracle's already passed. It's already too late. But you serve an unusual God who can do what actually bypasses the mentality of man to understand how God... I want God to do a miracle so great that people look past me and say, only God could have done that. How many wants a miracle like that? There is more. Next week, we're going to receive an offering. We do this one time a year. One time a year, we receive an unusual seed offering. This year, we're challenging you to make a mark. To make a mark. We're believing if 1,000 people give $1,000, we could receive $1 million offering in one day. And here's what I felt in my spirit this week is, when we succeed, and when we take that $1 million offering next week, it will not be because of one person. It will be because of many people. But if we fail, it will not be because of one person. It will be because of many people who said that they were satisfied with the normal and the usual. If you are satisfied with what you have, then all you're going to get when you walk out of this place is an extension of what you've already had. But if there's something in you that's saying there's got to be more, there has to be more, and I'm tired of living the status quo, I want to step into the unusual, then I'm challenging you next week. Take this step of faith with us. Like Kim says, if it doesn't touch your heart, I doubt it touches God's heart. And some of you have already made up your mind what is safe to give, what we can afford to give, what is comfortable to give. And if it's in your comfort zone, it's not in God's miracle zone. It's a good word right there. That the Holy Spirit just gave me that. If it's in your comfort zone, it's not in God's miracle zone. Peter did not step out on the water because it was comfortable. He stepped out because it was faith. It was the uncomfortable and the unusual, and he walked on water. God is waiting for you to take an unusual step of faith and receive an unusual miracle. And we're going to do this next Sunday. Some of you believe God for $1,000. And don't just say, well, you know, other people are going to give 1,000. I'm just going to play it safe. No. We need you. Everybody needs a part in this. Everybody has to play a part in this. And some of you, you got too little zeros. You need to add a few zeros to whatever it is you're giving. Because 1,000 doesn't even bother you. 1,000 is something you can lose out of your pocket, not even miss it. You need to up your giving just a little bit. Can I get a good amen? Don't say, what's the least I can do and get by? Say, what can I do that touches my heart and I know it's going to touch God's heart? And so not only from you, but business owners in this room, take a step of faith to sow something from your business. You say, Pastor, you are really bold asking people to give a lot of money. Well, why wouldn't I believe? I believe in what we're doing. So why wouldn't I be bold in saying I believe in giving to this? And hey, a person with an argument is always at the mercy of a person with an experience. And you can sit there and judge me and say this seed sowing stuff doesn't work, but I've seen it work in my life, and you can't talk me out of what I've already experienced. You go home and argue all you want, but I've lived it. I've seen him move, and I know he's going to do it again. Somebody give him a big praise. So I felt like the Holy Ghost was leading me to this story in 1 Kings chapter 17. We're going to go through this, 1 Kings chapter 17, and the message title of today is There is More. There is so much more. There is more healing. There is more freedom. There is more miracles. There is more in the way of blessing and provision, financial blessing and financial provision. There is more that you've not even tapped into. I heard about a man who had a dream. He went to heaven one day. And while he was in heaven, God or an angel took him to this storehouse. And he said he couldn't even begin to describe how enormous this storehouse was. It was so huge. It was so massive. And as he's walking through these storehouses, hundreds, thousands of shelves high up in the air, all filled with everything he could ever want, everything he could ever desire. And the angel in this dream took him back to this tiny little corner where there was a little empty corner in the back of this warehouse. And he looked at the angel and he said, well, why didn't you guys fill up that spot? And the angel said, oh, no, you got it backwards. That's all you believed God for when you was on earth. This is all that was available to you. I don't want to get to heaven and realize I only cleared out a little spot. I want God to have to put the angels on notice. Come on, he's cleaning us out, guys. He's got faith to believe us for more. How many's got faith to believe for more? You better help me preach today. We're in the unusual. Elijah is a man so unique and so unusual. A predecessor, one that shows up even in the New Testament. Some believe that he'll be one of the prophets that come back in Revelation during the time of the Antichrist. Such an unusual man, willing to take unusual steps of faith, but saw the most unusual miracles. But he is also a man that went through seasons. He would obey God. He would do what God told him to do, yet he still experienced highs and he went through lows. I don't care how faith-filled you are in this room today. You are not exempt from the lows of life. But it takes a low to appreciate the high. I heard somebody say that, man, I wish life was just like, all even. Well, I don't. How boring would that be? A life with no highs, a life with no excitement. But I've learned even they're building that new roller coaster behind our house. It takes a low to have a high. And when you have a high, you may go through another low. But honey, don't get discouraged. You're coming back out of that low to a new high. And this is what he's going to go through. He's going to go through highs and lows. And he has just stood before a couple that the Bible tells us is the most evil couple to ever rule. King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Now, there was more evil to her than just her makeup. All the old Pentecostal preachers used to preach on Jezebel. She wore makeup. That's what made her evil. No, she did a lot more than just wear bad makeup. She killed prophets. She hated God. She worshiped idols. and she hates this man Elijah. Well, Elijah goes and stands before Ahab, and he makes this declaration by the word of the Lord. He says, it will not rain until I declare for it to rain again, because the people had turned their backs from God, and God cut them off from their source of abundance. See, sometimes God will cut people off to bring them back. And that's what God's doing. He's cutting them off to bring them back. And well, now he's prophesied a drought, and so the drought is beginning to take place in the land, and Elijah's running out of food. But God tells Elijah, I want you to go down to this brook. The brook is called Cherith. And God tells him in verse 4, you will drink from the brook, and I've ordered the ravens to feed you there. Everybody say there. So he did what the Lord told him and went to the Cherith ravine east of Jordan and stayed there. Everybody say there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Now nobody's there with Elijah. Here is this great prophet. Here is this man that could control the weather and command the heavens not to give forth rain. And now he is having to live by a brook and depend on some dirty birds to bring him sandwiches, probably from the king's palace, to feed him. He's going through a season of isolated pain. And there are many in this room today, you're in this season of isolated pain. The word Cherith means cut off from the blessing, or cut down. And you think you're missing God's blessing. You think you're missing out that God has more for you, when the Bible says that it was God who sent him to this cut off creek and this broke down brook. See, here's what God's doing. God knows I must do a work in Elijah before I can do a work through Elijah. And we've all got to go through seasons where God has to do a work in us before he can do a work through us. And what God's trying to do is humble you privately. Because if I can humble you privately, then I can exalt you publicly. I believe God's getting tired of people being exalted in the church world, and then they fall and they make a big mistake and they become a stain on the name of God. I believe God's getting tired of that. I believe he's looking for some people who are willing to be humbled privately so that he can exalt them publicly. And he takes them through a season of brokenness at this broke down brook. Are you in a season of brokenness today? Well, if you have to ask, is God breaking me? Then he isn't. If you have to ask, has God broken me? Then he isn't. God must break us in order to use us. See, God will take you to the Cheriths. He will take you to these cut off creeks because he wants you to understand that your source is never going to be people. Your source will forever be him. And one person said it like this: God is never going to create for you a life in which he is not necessary. So he takes you to these brooks of brokenness. And when God's doing the breaking, it is a painful experience. But go through the breaking. See, here's our problem in our modern church world. We don't like to see anybody broken. So what we do is whenever God starts taking somebody through a broken season, we begin to develop a ministry to pull them out of their brokenness. So we have healing ministries and we have healing small groups. Why? Because they're being broken. We hate to see all the pain they're in. So we got to pull them out of that. We got to get them away from that brook and we got to heal them. And God's up in heaven saying, will you get out of my way? I'm trying to do something in their life and you keep trying to heal them. I'm trying to break them and you keep trying to put them back together. Get out of my way and let them go through this season of brokenness. These private moments are moments where you have to walk through alone. Friends can't walk through this season with you. You can't explain these seasons to anybody because it is something that God is doing in and through you. But can I encourage you today, when you go through a broken season, and you will if you want to be used by God. Now, if you don't care about being used by God, you may never go through a broken season. But if you want God to do something through you, then you're going to have to go through a broken season. When you're going through this season, watch your mouth. Look at somebody and say, watch your mouth. Because you can curse the process if you're not careful. I heard about this little bird, and he was in another flock of birds, and he was flying south for the winter. And while they were way up in the sky, a winter storm blew in, and this bird got separated from the rest of the flock. And he got so tired in this winter storm that his little wings gave out, and he fluttered all the way down, and he landed in the middle of this field. And the snow was piling up on this little bird, and he was freezing. He was thinking, oh, I'm going to freeze to death out here in the middle of this field, and I got nobody to help me. Just then, a cow walked over the top of that little bird and excused himself on top of that little bird. So now this little bird is covered under a pile of manure, and he's warm, but now he's covered under this manure. So he starts screaming out, tweet, 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 somebody help me. I'm not cold anymore, but now I'm covered in manure. Tweet, 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 tweet. And just sitting over on a fence post was an old cat. And you know cats don't know Jesus. And this cat was sitting over on this fence post. And he heard this little bird tweeting. He jumped off the fence post, went, dug through manure, pulled the bird out, and ate him. Here's the moral of the story. Everyone who drops manure on you isn't your enemy. Everyone who digs you out isn't your friend. But if you're in manure, keep your mouth shut. That's a good word for somebody. I'm not going to complain about this. My pain has positioned me for blessing. So if God cut me off from one thing, it must mean He's taking me to something else. It must mean if He cut me off here, there's something greater He has for me in my future. If you believe it, give Jesus a big praise in the house. Here's a big idea. God will use your pain to incite you to change. He's inciting you to change something. And if you'll go through the change, He's got unlimited blessings. Say it with me. There is more. 1 Kings 17:7. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. How many of you have ever heard God guides by where He provides? Amen. God's providing, so He's guiding. I know God's guiding because He's providing. I want to give you a new idea. Sometimes God guides by where He doesn't. Sometimes if God cuts you off here, it's because He's trying to redirect you over here. If you want to get out a lawn chair, a beach chair, and just spend the rest of your life down by broke down brook by yourself, God bless you. But that brook's dried up, and it didn't dry up so I would stay there. It dried up because God's moving me to a whole nother place. Verse 8, then the word of the Lord came to him, get up, go to Zarephath that belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Everybody say there. Look, I have commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there. Everybody say there. This is unusual blessing. And if you haven't understood the title of my message yet, I hope it's becoming clear that there is more. There is a place where there is more. There is a place. But if God can't get you there, then God can't bless you there. You'll live the rest of your life by Cutoff Creek unless God's able to move you there. But the good news is if God can get you to follow His instruction and take the step of faith to move there, He's already commanded the blessing to meet you there. Tell somebody God has a there for you. God has a there. It's an instruction. God has a there, it's a step of faith. God has a there, it's unusual. And what God has been doing all year long is trying to get you there. And I believe next week is our there. I believe when we walk in this place, God's about to make here there. I didn't even prepare this message at the beginning of the year, and I went back and I looked, what did I preach the first Sunday of the year? And do you know what God gave me to preach? He's moving us from here to there. And I didn't know God was even going to give me this message when I was preparing it. I think God has a there for Citygate Church. I think God has a there blessing for somebody in this house if you're willing to move. But you'll never get a miracle until you follow the instruction. The question I have for you today is, are you there? Are you there? Are you where you're supposed to be? Now watch this next verse. This one, I got to be honest with you, this one brought the preach out of me. It's a good verse right here. You ready? Verse 10. So Elijah got up and went to Zarephath. And when he arrived at the city gate, some of you will get it in just a second. Where's the miracle waiting? I didn't write the Bible. I'm just reading the Bible. I don't think it's any coincidence that God just said that there is the city gate, that the miracle's going to happen at the city gate. I don't think it's a coincidence that you're in this church. Out of all the thousands of churches in Cincinnati, God brought you right here in this season, at this time, at this moment, for us to do what we've never done before. Somebody give God a big praise in the house if you believe this is our there. When he arrived at the city gate, there. Where was the miracle? There. Where was there? At Citygate. If you're watching online this morning, come on. Other pastors invite you to their churches. I want to invite you to our church. I want to invite you to the Citygate. I want to invite you to your there. Are you tired? Are you tired of feeling like church is just a routine? Are you wanting more? Are you hungry for more? Then let me introduce you to there. It's called Citygate Church. And I'm a proud representative of the there that somebody's about to get a miracle. Give Jesus a big praise. You're in the right place. There's a widow gathering wood, and Elijah called to her and said, "Bring me a little water in a cup and let me drink." As she went to get it, he called to her and said, "And bring me some bread too." But she said, "As the Lord your God lives." Not her God yet. He's about to be. But as of this time, it's just your God. Isn't it funny how when a preacher tells you to take a step of faith, you're like, that's your God, not my God. I need to remind somebody today, the devil has never asked you to give. So if you feel something saying, hey, you know what, whatever you had prepared to give for the unusual, you need to double it. Like what God spoke to Nathan, you need to double it. Do not respond, "Get thee behind me, Satan." That's not the devil. That reminds me of a story. This husband took his wife shopping, and she saw this dress in a window, and it was beautiful. Oh my goodness, it was stunning. And she went in and she put this dress on, and she walked out, and she was turning in the mirror, and she was doing all the poses. And she asked the husband, she said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "How much is it?" And she told him, and it was a lot of money. And he said, "I think, get thee behind me, Satan." She said, "I told that to the devil too, and he said it looks better from back there." The devil ain't asking you to give anything today. As the Lord your God lives, I don't have anything baked. Only a handful of flour in the jar and a bit of oil in the jug. Just now, I'm gathering a couple of sticks in order to go prepare it for myself and my son. She has already got a vision. This woman is not a woman without vision. No, she has a vision. It's just the wrong vision. I'm going to go prepare it for myself and my son so we can eat it and die. That's a vision. Then Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a small loaf from it and bring it out to me." Did you hear what Elijah said? I love this. I'm good with your plan of you all eating and dying. Just bring me something first. Y'all don't need all the food before you die. You can eat half of it and still die. I'm just asking you, give me a little bit first. This is faith. Afterward, you may make some for yourself and your son, and then go die. What's Elijah doing here? He is challenging her limitations. Do you know what the unusual does for me every year? It challenges my limitations. It challenges me to take a step of faith, because Elijah has a need, and his need has become the gateway for her miracle. Here's what I've learned about needs. Miracles are made of need. You want to know the ingredients of a miracle? Need. A little bit of need, a cup of need, a sprinkle of need, a couple quarts of need. And if you got plenty of need, then you are a candidate for a miracle. Because if there is not a need to challenge you, then there can never be a word to stir you. So if I am preaching to people who are full and satisfied this morning, this message does nothing for you. But if I am preaching to people who have a need, this message is stirring you on the inside. When you ask God to build your faith, He'll stir your need. Did you read what the Apostle Paul wrote? And my God shall supply all my according to. Did you ever stop and think about that? I don't need Him to supply my needs. I need Him to supply my desires. I need Him to supply what I need. I need the substance. I don't need the needs. But what if Paul was saying is when you pray for God for a miracle, God gives you a need instead. And when you fulfill the need and when you're obedient during the need, then God said the need I give you is equal to the reserve that I have waiting on you in heaven. So the greater your need, the greater the miracle God can perform in your life. Here's a big idea. If it were easy, it wouldn't be a miracle. This woman is in a time of famine. Elijah's in a time of famine. He caused the famine. And now he's making this woman feed him. A famine is a time when you have resources. They're just running out. And I believe there's some people in this room today, you've got some resources, but they're starting to run out. You've got it, but it's starting to run out and you need a new supply. So Elijah shows up to this woman. He meets her at the city gate. Now I don't know about you, but I just kind of pictured a widow woman who's, kind of like something on Wives of Orange County. I mean, she's living in a mansion. She's got a full entertainment system. She's got a Bentley sitting in the driveway. And he walks in, and she's like, hey, why don't you go hang out in the pool out back? Elijah goes in the pool because the creek dried up. So now he's hanging out in the pool. She brings him some lemonade, brings him some iced tea. You closed on Sunday, you my lemonade. She brings him some lemonade and some iced tea, and he's just chillaxing in the pool and taking it easy. And then he says, hey, do you got some cake in there? Can you bring me some cake? Because if God commanded somebody to take care of you, wouldn't you think they would have something to take care of you with? But you keep trying to figure out how God's going to do it. And you keep missing the miracle of who God's going to do it through. God did not command her because she had stuff. God commanded her because she had obedience. And she was willing to obey the word of the prophet and move when he said, you bring me a piece of bread first. Sometimes God's answers don't look like what we had in mind. In other words, God may use someone to bless you who looks like they don't have anything, but their act of obedience may be the result of overflow taking place in your life. But God always gives unusual strategies to gain unusual victories. Bring me a piece of bread. And her response, I don't have any bread. The woman could only see what she did not have. Here is the goal of the enemy. He wants you to focus on what you don't have, what you used to have, and what you wish you had. What I don't have, what I used to have, what I wish I had. I'm believing for an unusual offering. Well, Pastor, I don't have it. Well, Pastor, we used to have it, but there's been a setback. Well, if I only had it, Pastor. And you have completely lost sight of what's in your hand. All God needs to bless you is what you have. God never asks you for what you don't have. Anything He's asked you for, it's already within reach. What do you have? She didn't realize the ingredients for her miracle were already in her midst. What do you have? I've only got a little. But you know what I've noticed? Rarely does a seed start out big. Most seeds are small. But as somebody said, in an acorn, there's a forest of trees. Seeds always look little. And if it's in seed form right now, a seed never looks like much, but it contains everything that you need. Give what you have. Don't waste your time talking about what you don't have, because the exit from your need is a seed. But we have a scarcity mentality of God. We're going to run out. Yeah, but God, if I give this, I'm going to run out. And we love to play it safe. Help me out here real quick. Maddie, run up here and help me out real quick. We're going to play a game, musical chairs. Give me some music up here. Anybody remember the game of musical chairs? And that one punk kid that pulled the chair out from under you and you smack your head, you remember that? So what we do is they're going to play some music. We're going to play some music and we're going to go around the chairs. Then they're going to stop the music and we got to sit down. Anybody familiar with musical chairs? You know this game, right? You got me something, Marcus? Here we go. Ready? Start the music. World. Here we go. Stop. Does anybody see anything wrong with this game? It doesn't take any faith to play musical chairs when there's more chairs than people. But you let me pull one of these chairs out. And now, play it, Marcus. Stop! Oh. Still, no faith required. You'll never see kids play musical chairs like this because there's still too many chairs. More chairs than there is people. Well, how about now? Woo! It's getting tough, right? Bengals would love odds like this. Ready? Here we go. Here we go. Stop! See, now we've reached the place of comfort. We can play this game all day long and never run out because there is equal chairs as there is people. But what if God says, Eric, it's unusual Sunday, and I want you to sow something you've never sowed before. Yeah, but God, I'm real comfortable right now. You know, God, I'm just going through everyday life. Everyday life is kind of normal. I don't really have to exercise faith at all in life. God, it's just every day I come home, I know I got a chair. And what if God says, give away the chair? Yeah, I don't know about that, God. But it's the instruction I choose to obey that determines the miracle that I receive. And so what God does is He says, now give this last chair. Give this chair away. And now guess what's happening? Now I got to walk by faith. And now I got to walk hearing God. Play music. So now I got to hear. But then, you ready? The music stops. That's it. Play to win, Maddie. And here's where the devil gets you. See, you never should have given. That church was just out for your money. And the devil is so focused on getting this one little thing you had left and making you think you lost it all. But when this happens, the Holy Ghost is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, I didn't take your chairs away. I just moved them. You stay. But now I'm walking around my blessing and I ain't got no devil to bother me. Because God has blessed me in a place that the devil can't touch it. Now God has provided in a place where the devil can't take it. See, He said, I'm going to speak to the devourer and I'm going to rebuke the devourer. What has happened is God didn't take my blessing. He moved my blessing to a new there. And if I'll be faithful and follow His instruction, He's taking me to a place that the devil can't touch it. Somebody give Jesus a big praise in the house. Thank you. I'm coming to a close. We don't give what we have not because we don't have it to give, but we fear what we won't have if we give it. You are focused on what you're losing, and you have no idea what you're gaining when you take that step of faith and sow. Here's the point. She did not have enough anyways, and her son were going to die. Do you think if God asks you for something, that if you hold on to it, you're going to do any better with it? We have believed God. Kim and I have believed God every step of our lives that we've been together. And this Tuesday, it'll be 14 years. 14 years. Isn't that awesome? Tuesday, 14 years. And I can remember those times where the devil sat down. I remember this one time, oh my goodness, what a moment this was. I had a rocking chair. And I sat down in that rocking chair. And I remember rocking back and forth, and I was going through the mail, and bill after bill after bill started showing up. And then all of a sudden, Kim, I'm not blaming Kim. I'm just saying she's the only other person in the house other than me at this time. I'm not blaming her though. But somebody threw away our real estate tax bill. You know, your real estate tax. That we had gotten that bill for half a year. She threw it away, so we got the whole bill with penalty. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh Lord, what are we going to do? And I remember sitting in this chair, and can I tell you, this was the devil's chair. And I was sitting in this chair going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And something hit me, and in this chair, I screamed out to the top of my lungs, money cometh! You say, that's unusual. It don't have to make sense to you. It worked for me. And I jumped up and I started walking around the family room. Money cometh! Money cometh! I went to the bottom of the stairs and I started yelling at Kim. She was upstairs. I said, Kim, come here. She came to the top of the stairs. She said, what is it? I said, shout, money cometh. She went, money cometh, and walked back in the bedroom. I was very new to ministry. I didn't get a lot of invitations. But do you know, in that week, following that moment, I got 3 invitations, and one of them blessed me that we were able to pay the whole tax bill preaching one service. I don't have to explain to you how it works. I just know it works. And I've seen God do it when I'm willing to move. We've been faithful. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says. The flour jar will not become empty, and the oil jug will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the surface of the land. So she proceeded to do according to the word of the Lord, the word of Elijah. Then the woman, watch, I never caught this part. Did you ever see this? Then the woman, Elijah, and her household ate for many days. The flour jar did not become empty, and the oil jug did not run dry, according to the word of the Lord he had spoken through Elijah. Say this with me. And this is going to be tough for some of you because I know you're facing some difficult times. But can you say this with me by faith? My famine is over today. Say it again. My famine is over today. I don't know if your famine has been a sickness. I don't know if your famine has been an attack on your family. I don't know if your famine has been an attack on your mind. I don't know if your famine has been an attack on your finances, but I need somebody by faith to declare it. My famine is over today. Come on and say it. My famine is over. Come on, call the devil back in the room and say, devil, you need to hear this. My famine, my family's famine. It's over. My famine is over today. What? So she's in. I'm coming to a close. You can stay standing. Now watch what happens. Remember, God moved him to a there. So here she is in her house. Elijah's in the house. The rest of the household is in the house, and they are all eating. I mean, you want another piece of cake? I'll go get you another piece of cake. Flour jar fills back up, oil jar fills back up, brings them more cake, never running out of cake, never running out of cake. But what we miss is that everywhere outside the house, the famine was still going on. But for the people in the house, my famine is over today. Yeah, but Pastor, I'm a little uncomfortable where the economy's going, and what if this person gets elected, and what if this happens? Hey, famine may be going on outside your house, but you can declare, in my house, we are blessed because we've been obedient to the word of the Lord, and we declared my famine is over today. Let me say this last thing. This woman didn't realize that one day her miracle would need a miracle. She didn't know her miracle would need a miracle. Let me explain to you what I'm saying. Do you remember what was going to happen to her and her son? They were going to die. Elijah shows up, and her miracle is Elijah. She didn't know she's going to need a miracle from her miracle. And so she obeys the word of the prophet, and she gives to Elijah first, and God begins to move and perform a miracle, and now everybody in the house eating, until one day they get up and the woman screams. Elijah comes running, and that woman's son was dead. He was dead. But she had taken care of Elijah. See, she had provided when God said provide. So now the miracle she needed was already in the house. I don't know if you hear what I'm saying or not. You think the devil's going to stop messing with you after next Sunday and be like, oh, I'm not going to mess with him. No, he's just going to hit you in a different direction. If I couldn't get him here, I'm going to come at him there. But if you've already invited the miracle in your house, then you've got a place you can turn to. And where was Elijah? He's downstairs at the breakfast table eating some bread from that miracle jar, that miracle oil. And she goes, my son died. Why did you do this to me? Elijah said, hold up. Walks upstairs, lays the boy on his bed, stretches himself out over him, and begins to pray. And the boy is resurrected back to life. You never know when the miracle you provide today will provide for you tomorrow. The miracle you're providing today might be the miracle that shows up to save your family, to save your kids tomorrow.